everybody, it's the Lawn Gnome, and welcome to the final installment of the 2020 Gnome Doc. Of course, this is also known as the 8th installment of the Gnome Doc that actually began back in 2012, which was pretty much where this amazing uptick in my YouTube journey began when it comes to subscribers, as well as expanding my horizons on creating these documentaries every single year. I just want to say thank you very much for joining me every single year as I put this large project together, talking about an extremely important element in popular culture. And if it wasn't for you guys demanding to get a continuing story of the wonderful world that is DC animation, we wouldn't be here today discussing today's episode. So this is now officially going to reach its conclusion, but is the story entirely over? Well, that's definitely a no. There's still so many more years for this to go, and who knows what will happen in the future. But in this final installment, we're really going to see the DC animation universe take new heights, from joining the streaming wars by creating the DC Universe platform and seeing some new shows emerge in the world of DC animation, as well as seeing the return of some that we thought were long gone. Not to mention DC Animation's first trip to the movie theaters since 1993 with a very big movie that I personally wasn't interested in seeing, but it definitely was a success. And in regards to the DC animated original universe films, we officially reached the conclusion of the 15-part story that began with Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, with its concluding story of Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. And these past couple of years have definitely been insightful, and I am just really excited to see to what DC Animation is going to be offering us in the coming decade, because one of the few things that I have to say is that I'm really excited for 2021, because we're going to be getting some really interesting DC animated projects, as well as hopefully some brand new seasons to some current running shows, now that HBO Max has officially absorbed the DC animated world. So thank you very much for sitting down and joining me every single year for these amazing Gnome Doc adventures, and we will officially begin with the conclusion of the 2020 Gnome Docs. Take care, everyone. As the latter half of the decade progressed, DC Animation kept making a variety of films and TV shows. There were a lot of ideas in the works to press forward and sometimes pick up the pieces. The big budget films were in a tough spot after the release of Justice League. The MCU was on the verge of the end of its first major storyline, dropping the trailer for Avengers Infinity War. This was going to be the culmination of everything that began with 2008 and the original Iron Man. Even though Wonder Woman was a tremendous success, beating all three of the individual box office numbers of the MCU films that very same year, there was tremendous hype for February 2018 and Ryan Coogler's Black Panther.
On the small screen, Marvel did have a following with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and their MCU Netflix series would see all 4 of their title characters come together in an 8-episode series called The Defenders. Still, the Arrowverse was beating Marvel in the ratings and would continue to utilize the CW seed with 2 brand new animated series. The first was Freedom Fighters The Ray, which was based on the character that made his appearance in the live-action Arrowverse crossover Crisis on Earth X. Later that year, thanks to Matt Ryan returning to voice Constantine in Justice League Dark, he would return to voice Constantine again in the CW seed series Constantine City of Demons. That series would be rated for mature audiences only and was a true sign of things to come. Streaming was starting to expand like never before, as Netflix was the start of the massive explosion of companies deciding to take the same idea and put their own programming, past and new, and original on their platforms. Hulu, Amazon Prime, and even YouTube Premium arrived on the scene, and there were even official announcements of streaming services from Disney, Warner Brothers, Apple, and NBC Universal arriving by the end of the decade. At this point, DC Animation was sticking to their game plan, and while their work may not have been some of their best, the DC Universe continued to progress. The team would still take pauses to provide innovative takes on the iconic characters. In 2018, they would take a crack with their first official Elseworlds title with the 30th DC Universe film, Gotham by Gaslight. Elseworlds is a classic DC staple featuring alternate worlds of DC and putting those characters into anything from different time periods to alternate realities. Gotham by Gaslight would also be the 3rd DC Universe film to be given an R rating. The story put Batman and his world into the Victorian era hunting down Jack the Ripper. Everything a Batman fan could want was in this film. It was dark, fresh, and most importantly, a true detective story. Even Bruce Greenwood returned to voice the Dark Knight after an incredible performance of 2007's Batman Under the Red Hood. The film was praised by just about everyone, calling it a true step above The Killing Joke and a more reassuring film based on the direction where DC Animation was going. The kids would also get their fill around the same time with a brand new DC Lego film featuring The Flash and a 3rd DC Superhero Girls Lego film called Supervillain High. 2018 would also transport Batman fans into another world with the 4th installment of the DC original animated films with Batman Ninja. The Bat family and even some of the major rogues would be transported into feudal Japan. Like the 2008 animated film Batman Gotham Knight, this film would be made by Japanese filmmakers, including director Junpei Mizusaki and animated by Yamato Works. The film had its own Japanese voice cast, and being produced by Warner Brothers, it would eventually arrive in the United States featuring a brand new English voice cast, including Roger Craig Smith voicing Batman and Veep star Tony Hale as the Joker. Even Batman animation staples like Tara Strong and Will Friedle would lend their voices to this film as well. As beautiful as the film was to look at, it just couldn't hit the mark. Based on past innovative Batman projects, it would only gross a little over $3 million in domestic sales. This wouldn't necessarily be a severe blow to the animated films, but there would be something else happening at the very same time that would. The departure of Bruce Timm and Andrea Romano were tough things for the fans to bear. Even though James Tucker and Wes Gleason had been filling the shoes a little better with every year, losing the originals is never an easy change to deal with. In April of 2018, another of the original creators would announce his retirement with his final contribution to DC Animation. Alan Burnett, who had been part of the DC Animated Universe family since the very first Batman series, wrote the script for the newest DC Universe film, Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay. This would be a new villain-driven story and a true step above the previous Suicide Squad film, Batman Assault on Arkham, even tacking on one of the biggest surprises, Christian Slater, to voice the main character of Deadshot. This film would not only feature the Suicide Squad, but there would be a second group of villains as the antagonists of the film, led by the Reverse Flash. The even bigger surprise would be C. Thomas Howell returning to voice the Reverse Flash, with a huge plot plot twist that would tie this film properly into the current storyline. This film was unlike any of the other films that came before it. Burnett said they wanted to pay tribute to the grindhouse films of the 1970s, and they did not disappoint. The film was off the walls, not to mention much blood and brains covering the walls with another hard R. DC Animation truly took advantage of this rating. Critics called it the perfect blend of everything from action to comedy and still managing to show just how crazy this film is supposed to be. Now with the New Guard officially holding destiny in their hands, the mission was clear. It was time to press on and form a team worthy of the ones that came before them.
'Cause it's my movie, my superhero movie. It's all about me, yeah, it's all
As 2018 was coming to an end, the hype was real on all fronts for DC. With the new DCEU film on the horizon, James Wan's Aquaman, with Jason Momoa reprising his role. The younger DC audience would get on the Aquaman hype train first, with the new DC superheroes Lego film Aquaman Rage of Atlantis, and a few months later, DC Superhero Girls Legends of Atlantis would arrive in October. It wouldn't be these films that would grab the attention of the DC youth that summer. It would be the ever-popular Teen Titans Go. The show was still going strong on Cartoon Network with no point of slowing down. And in July of 2018, the Teen Titans would arrive on the big screen with Teen Titans Go to the Movies. This would be a landmark in DC animation, being the second official DC animated film to hit a widescreen release since 1993's Batman Mask of the Phantasm. It would also be the first 2D animated film produced by Warner Brothers since 1999's The Iron Giant. Like the television series, the film would blow past all expectations, grossing $52 million worldwide for a film that only had a budget of $10 million. The film was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and was given praise for its tongue-in-cheek humor, even making fun of itself and the current state of live-action DC films. Even with the film's faults, it was a breath of fresh air and exactly what was needed from animation at the time. Even bigger news would come just a few weeks later. Warner Brothers would then take their second step into the world of streaming with their launch of their DC Universe streaming platform. The service would include the ability to read DC comic books digitally and enjoy DC content from past and present, including the Richard Donner Superman, the Tim Burton Batman, and even old television shows. Of course, there would be plenty of animated content featuring DC characters like Batman the Animated Series and even the Super Friends, just in time to celebrate the 80th anniversary of Superman. However, the bigger announcement was the brand new television shows that could only be seen through this service. Much like Marvel's Netflix shows, these would see no barriers, and they could be as violent as they wanted to be. Fans would be introduced to the Titans, a very dark and mature version of heroes like Robin, Beast Boy, and Starfire. The bigger announcement was the longest-awaited third season of Young Justice, which would premiere right after New Year's 2019. It was made clear that this show was not going to disappoint. The writers, artists, and the original voice cast would all return to show their appreciation for the fans who kept demanding that this show continue. Now their wish had come true. Before that, the third new edition of the DC Universe film library would arrive. Not only would it be the first of the second two-part film package offered by DC Animation, but it would be the re-envisioning of a story that had already been released in the library. It had been over a decade since the DC Universe film library was launched, and it all started with a film called Superman Doomsday, a more compressed and easy-to-follow version of the landmark DC comic stories The Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen. This time, the DC Animation team said it was time to tell the whole story, and at the same time, not make it a standalone. Rather, incorporate it into the current DC Universe story, pushing it even further. This would also be the first of 3 stories that would capture each member of the Trinity, meaning that moving forward, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman would see their own individual stories push forward this DC Universe storyline. The Death of Superman would bring the current cast of the DC Universe films back, including Jerry O'Connell as Superman and his wife Rebecca Romijn to voice Lois Lane. Also, the newest voice lent to Lex Luthor was the fan favorite Rainn Wilson from The Office. Reviews for Death of Superman were very positive. The film was dubbed one of the best in the last 5 years, praising the epic and emotional punch that the film accomplishes in all 3 acts. The highlight of the film was the relationship of Superman and Lois. Having a husband and wife team as the voices only made the chemistry more stronger and real. People even appreciated taking the pre-New 52 story and blending it perfectly with the current storyline in the films. The icing on the cake would be the 2 combined CW seed packages added to the DC Original library. Freedom Fighters The Ray and Constantine's City of Demons would now be available to reach a larger audience now that they were on Blu-ray and DVD. 2019 began and DC was off and running. Even though there was a lot of speculation on the comic book industry side in general, it wouldn't kill the vibe. The success of DC on all of its fronts had everyone excited for the next offering from DC Animation, and that would arrive in January. The second half of its 2-film package, Reign of the Supermen, just like its predecessor, the film would have strong ties to the source material, including the 4 new mysterious Supermen who were teased during the Death of Superman's end credits. The new voices would include Patrick Fabian as Cyborg Superman, Cress Williams as Steel, and Gotham and Shameless star Cameron Monaghan as Superboy. However, the big change in this film would feature the main antagonist, which would also show the fans how this story was connected to the current DC Universe film storyline. A villain from the past would make his presence known, and it would be Darkseid. With a final showdown between Superman and Cyborg Superman, this was a moment of call to arms for all Justice League members and fellow superheroes alike for the final showdown with Apocalypse. Both films would be combined into one film later that year in a deluxe edition package called The Death and Return of Superman. The fans would have to wait for the epic showdown of good versus evil, however. Just like the MCU faithful were waiting for Avengers Endgame to hit theaters later that year, the DC fandom would be kept busy. March would see the release of the 33rd film in the DC Universe library, Justice League vs. the Fatal Five. It would be a true treat for the fans, as it would be a callback to the original DC animated universe, and even be a true continuation of the DC animated timeline. While Kevin Conroy had supplied his voice many times for DC Animation, this would be the first time in a long time that Susan Eisenberg and George Newbern would return. Fans would even see newcomers like Miss Martian and the first human female Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz. Down to the score, this film would become a true fan favorite and a real piece of DC Animation nostalgia while pushing the original DC Animation storyline into a new age. Holding on to the nostalgia factor, DC saw a huge positive reception for Young Justice Outsiders, the long-awaited 3rd season of the fan-favorite show. The show would introduce new characters like Halo and Geoforce, and even see characters like Beast Boy become more of a presence. The show would even bend the rules a little bit by allowing some foul language onto the dialogue. It was a real joy for many to have the show back, even though it was not accessible for everyone at the time. The same would be said about 2 new live-action DC series, Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, which would have small links to the Arrowverse. DC would also return to the big screen with Shazam. Chuck star Zachary Levi would fill the shoes of everyone's favorite magical superhero, Captain Marvel, even though they couldn't use the exact name to avoid confusion with the MCU's female superhero of the same name. Sometimes it pays to be known by 2 names just in case. The film received very positive reviews, now making it the 3rd successful live-action film in the DCEU in a row. This only added more to the confusion, wondering what was going to become of the DCU film universe with the news of Ben Affleck leaving the Batman role and speculation of Henry Cavill's return as Superman. It wouldn't stop the animation division from providing new content, as 2019 also saw the celebration of the 80th anniversary of Batman. The celebration would start with the final episode of the popular DC TV show Gotham, as fans would part ways with Ben McKenzie's Jim Gordon as the Commissioner of Gotham City's police department looking up to the rooftops to only see Batman emerge for the first time. This would be followed soon after by the newest DC animated original film, Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As crazy as this crossover was, the reception for the film was through the roof from both loyal fandoms. The film combined the drama of Batman with the action comedy of TMNT perfectly, even making Shredder a credible threat to Batman. The film would gross almost $4 million in home video sales with a post-credits scene for a hopeful sequel. Batman would then return to the newest DC Universe release in Batman Hush, an adaptation to a fan-favorite DC comic storyline written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Jim Lee. While the film did have some high notes and was beautifully animated, there was a major change and it did not bode well with the fans of the source material. Though the film did well in sales with the overall market, more Batman fanfare would hit home video with the new Lego installment Batman Family Matters. Then, on the coattails of the success of Teen Titans Go to the movies, the newest film in the original animated library would arrive with Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. Not only would this be an enjoyable film, it would be the first time since the end of the original Teen Titans series that this incarnation of the characters would return to the world of animation. Taking a comical spin on the DC multiverse lore, the reviews were outstanding. One review said it best. It was filled with the classic characters and fan-satisfying fun. This chaotic cartoon crossover is sure to delight even the crankiest Teen Titans fans and the cheekiest Teen Titans Go diehards. Basically, no matter who you were entering this arena, you would have an amazing time. The next DC Universe film would arrive soon after in Wonder Woman Bloodlines. It had been 10 years since the last Wonder Woman animated film was released, so for the fans, this was a highly anticipated addition to the DC collection. While the film featured a great deal of Wonder Woman fanfare, including a large amount of her rogues gallery, along with a voice cast including Kimberly Brooks and Constance Zimmer, the film was an unfortunate flop. Coming off of a disappointment in Hush, Bloodlines only made things worse. A weak story with a boring pace, it was one of the lowest grossing films in the DC Universe library to date. Its only saving grace was the DC Showcase short attached to Wonder Woman Bloodlines. The shorts had been on a long hiatus since the Catwoman short attached to the animated film Batman Year One. No one knew the Showcase shorts would make a comeback until Sergeant Rock arrived with Batman Hush. Wonder Woman Bloodlines would feature Death, a character from Neil Gaiman's Sandman universe, and is one of the most brilliant DC animated pieces to this very day. Along with Death, another female favorite from the DC world would make a small bump in the road, feel like nothing, and she would prepare for DC's very positive outlook of 2020.
It's oh so quiet.
2020 was looking to be the biggest year for DC to date, with tons of positivity in the air. It was all thanks to their golden girl, Harley Quinn. While there were mixed feelings about Margot Robbie's return in the next DCEU film, Birds of Prey, it was the DC Universe streaming platform where she was truly thriving in animated form. DC Animation pulled out all the stops thanks to Big Bang Theory star Kaylee Cuoco, lending her voice to the clown princess of crime in the new animated series Harley Quinn. This was not your dad's Harley Quinn, as it would be a rated R comedy series featuring all the famous faces of Batman's rogues gallery. The show oozed with talent, including Lake Bell as Poison Ivy, Alan Tudyk as the Joker, and Tony Hale as Dr. Psycho. The show would even see Diedrich Bader return to voice Batman. Even DB Smoove and Seinfeld's Jason Alexander would feature new regular voices as Frank, Poison Ivy's talking plant, and Cy Borgman. It had a nostalgic Saturday morning cartoon feel, but thanks to the blood, language, and the sheer insanity, DC Animation showed just how they could take advantage of streaming to new heights. Harley Quinn would almost immediately get renewed for a second season, developing an immediate fan base overnight. Everyone was excited for the summer with the anticipated sequel of Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, and newcomers Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal. Not to mention the ever-expanding Arrowverse, with Batwoman and Black Lightning getting new seasons, and also welcoming their newest addition, Stargirl. No one would have expected the rug to get taken out from under their feet, as the entire world would have to be put on pause because of an unseen pandemic. Emerging from Wuhan, China, a new virus called COVID-19 would spread through Asia like wildfire, and in less than 3 months affect the entire globe. Major cities would have to shut down, forcing the entertainment world to stop production on all kinds of entertainment, and even be forced to push release dates of films back, as movie theaters would be forced to shutter their doors. As of now, the film industry is slowly opening up again, but movies like Wonder Woman 84, The Batman, and The Suicide Squad have an unseen future. This has now pushed streaming to become the main source of entertainment, and with Warner Brothers launching HBO Max, their first big announcement would be the release of Justice League: The Snyder Cut. Even the comic book industry was thrown into an upheaval, as DC would see their editors fired and a possible future of the end of printed issues of comics. Fortunately, DC Animation was able to give fans their slated 2020 home video releases. The first was Superman Red Sun, based on Mark Millar's Elseworlds title of Superman's Kryptonian ship landing in 1940s communist Russia. The film would feature Jason Isaacs as the voice of Superman, and it received overall positive reviews as an intriguing and innovative idea for the DC Universe and Superman. Younger audience would get the next Lego adventure in Shazam! Magic and Monsters. It would, however, be the next DC Universe film that would be the pivotal film in the library. Justice League Dark: Apocalypse War would be the final installment of the DC Universe storyline that started back in 2013 with Justice League Flashpoint Paradox. The DC heroes would go to war with Darkseid after the events of Reign of the Supermen, only to flash forward 2 years later to see that the heroes had failed, allowing Earth to turn into a wasteland ruled by Apocalypse. It would fall onto the shoulders of John Constantine with the help of a weakened Superman, Damian Wayne, and Raven to save the Earth and finally banish Darkseid once and for all. The story would not get a happy ending, rather a somber but hopeful one, as Constantine would tell the Flash it was all up to him to do what he swore he wouldn't once more, hopefully to give Earth a better future than what they presently saw that remained. While the film wasn't perfect, many said that Apocalypse War did exactly what it was supposed to do, tie up all the loose ends and give the story a well-deserved ending. Still in the heights of the pandemic, fans would get 3 more animated offerings from DC. The first would be Deathstroke: Knights and Dragons, another movie based on a CW Seed animated series starring Michael Chiklis as Deathstroke. The next DC Universe film would be an original and new take on Superman's origin story in Superman: Man of Tomorrow. The film would be the first step into the next chapter of DC animation with a new voice cast and animation style, even sending important messages about accepting different people for who they are. This film included the first appearances of Lobo and Parasite in the DC animated film library. The reception was overall positive, exciting the fans for what was to come. The year would wrap up with another first in the second DC Showcase Shorts collection, Batman: Death in the Family. Not only would it include all the new DC Showcase Shorts, including The Phantom Stranger and Adam Strange, but the title short would be the very first DC animated interactive movie, where the viewer would be able to choose from 3 different storylines based around the original source material. The film would also see the return of Bruce Greenwood and John DiMaggio as Batman and the Joker. It is hard to say what the future holds for DC Comics, now that the comic book company is under new management and COVID-19 is still thriving. For now, we will just have to take it one day at a time. 2021 will see the 40th DC Universe film arrive in Batman: Soul of the Dragon, a Bruce Wayne-driven story by the kung fu craze of the 1970s. The world of DC animation will also welcome the JSA in the film Justice Society World War II. Batman will close the year out with the third two-part animated film project, Batman The Long Halloween, based on the legendary Jeff Loeb masterpiece. DC Universe programming will officially be absorbed into HBO Max, leaving the DC Universe platform to remain as a digital comics-only platform. HBO Max will premiere Harley Quinn Season 3 and Young Justice Season 4, along with new seasons of the live-action shows Titans and Doom Patrol. DC Superhero Girls finally made the big leap from internet to television in 2019. It is already awaiting its second season on Cartoon Network with 49 episodes under its belt. Eventually, the movie theaters will open again, and the fans will be welcomed back with a slew of anticipated films. While Wonder Woman 1984 still has the possibility of being a 2020 Christmas miracle, 2021 will feature The Suicide Squad and the long-awaited Black Adam starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. 2022 will be even bigger, with the Lego Batman Movie 2, The Batman starring Robert Pattinson, Aquaman 2, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and The Flash, which will not only be a potential film that saves the continuity of DCEU, but will also feature both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton as Batman, introducing the DCEU multiverse. As we eagerly await things to get back to normal, one thing is certain: the fans will manage to get their fill of DC animation by any means necessary.
Someone to